Your college fund is gone. We used it for your brother's wedding. I've replayed that sentence in my mind 1,000 times, and even now, it hits like a punch to the chest. My name is Natalie Parker. I'm 22, and I'm sitting in my dorm room at Jefferson University, where I'm completing my biomedical engineering degree on a full-ride scholarship. 4 years ago, I couldn't have imagined being here, especially not after that gut-wrenching afternoon when I opened a folder in my father's office and saw the truth in black and white. The entire college fund my parents had promised me had been drained to pay for my brother Caleb's lavish wedding. Growing up, Caleb and I were close. He was 4 years older but always looked out for me, letting me tag along when others wouldn't. Still, it was always clear who the star of the family was. Caleb could bring home average report cards and still get celebrated dinners. I brought home straight A's and got a distracted nod. I truly believed that my hard work, my spotless record, and my ambition would one day earn me the same pride they gave to him so freely. They told me they were saving for my future. They called it Natalie's College Fund. Every birthday, every holiday, they put on a show of investing in me. But when the time came, my future was traded away for flowers, a champagne fountain, and their golden son's perfect day. I remember sitting there frozen, staring at the bank statements spread across the desk like crime scene evidence. The numbers didn't lie. Just months before, the account labeled Natalie's Education had nearly $90 in it. Then came a slow, calculated drain: $30 for the venue deposit, $25 for catering, $8 for a wedding dress, and even $12 for Caleb and his fiancée Olivia's honeymoon package. It wasn't just money that vanished. It was everything I'd built my future upon, gone without a second thought. When my parents came home that night, I was waiting at the kitchen table. I wasn't crying, I wasn't shouting, I was numb. I pushed the statements toward them and asked, "What is this?" My voice didn't even sound like mine. My mother looked uncomfortable, guilty even. My father, however, didn't flinch. He accused me of invading their privacy, as if it were wrong of me to look into the account that had been promised to me for years. "Caleb's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event," my mother finally said, as if that explained everything. My father added, "You can still go to college. Natalie, you'll get loans. Maybe community college is more your speed anyway." In that moment, something inside me broke, not from weakness, but from realization. They had never seen my education as a priority. Not my scholarships, not my science fair medals, not my dreams of biomedical research. All of it was just background noise to the real show. Their golden son walking down the aisle. I left the table without another word. That night, while they slept soundly upstairs, I lay in bed with tears soaking into my pillow, staring up at the ceiling. I felt like my whole life had been a lie. Every "we're saving for your future," every "we believe in you," was just a hollow performance. But by dawn, the grief had turned into something else: determination. If they wouldn't back me, I'd find a way on my own. The next day, I made an appointment with my guidance counselor, Mrs. Bennett, the only adult in my life who had ever truly seen my potential. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to minimize it. When I finished, she simply leaned forward and said, "Natalie, this is a setback, not your ending." In that moment, I didn't just feel heard. I felt armed. The battle wasn't over. But now I had a plan. A real one. One that didn't depend on anyone's broken promises but my own relentless will to succeed. Mrs. Bennett and I worked out a plan that same afternoon. The timeline was tight. Most major scholarship deadlines had passed, but there was still a window of opportunity if I moved fast and aimed high. "You're not just a good student, Natalie," she told me. "You're exceptional. Now it's time to make the world see it too." I dove into action like my life depended on it, because it did. I increased my SAT prep. Even though my scores were already in the top percentile, I rewrote every essay, again and again, until every word bled with truth and purpose. I wasn't just chasing grades anymore. I was chasing freedom. Through Mrs. Bennett, I was introduced to Dr. Rajan, a professor at a local community college who was doing research on biodegradable polymers in medical applications. I emailed him that same night, offering to volunteer in his lab for free. 2 days later, I was standing in his lab, suited up and taking notes on chemical bonding and material testing like my future depended on every detail, because it did. Outside the lab, I took on a weekend shift shadowing nurses at Westfield General Hospital. It wasn't glamorous. I helped change linens, wheeled patients to X-rays, and stood quietly during intake interviews. But every hour there reminded me why I wanted to be in biomedical engineering in the first place, to help people heal. Not because my parents expected it, but because I believed I could make a difference. At home, I said nothing about what I was doing. My parents were too busy finalizing wedding menus and picking monogrammed napkins to notice. When they occasionally asked about my college plans, I offered vague replies, still looking at options, or just focusing on my grades for now. I didn't owe them explanations anymore. But inside, I was working harder than I ever had. I compiled a list of 12 universities with strong biomed programs and generous aid packages. Each application was tailored, every essay personal. I poured everything into those applications, not just my achievements, but my story, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the relentless fight to reclaim what had been stolen. I gathered glowing letters of recommendation from Mrs. Bennett, Dr. Rajan, and even a nurse supervisor who had seen me show up every Sunday without fail. Meanwhile, I intercepted every piece of college mail at home, just in case they weren't going to sabotage this. Not again. I didn't just want to get accepted. I wanted to prove that even after everything they took from me, I could still rise. As the wedding day crept closer, so did my sense of suffocation. My parents still expected me to play the perfect daughter role, smiling through dress fittings, posing in bridesmaid photos, attending endless tastings and planning sessions. I did it all with a mask of calm. But inside, I was counting every dollar they spent as a piece of my stolen future. The final straw came one night at a pre-wedding dinner, held at an upscale French restaurant where the wine list alone looked like a college tuition breakdown. I sat across from my brother, watching him bask in everyone's praise. When we stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Caleb," I said quietly, "do you know where all the money for this wedding came from?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Mom and Dad said they'd been saving." I stared at him. "They were. For my education." His face paled. "Natalie, I didn't know it was that money." "Yes, you did," I said, my voice steady but laced with pain. "You just didn't want to deal with the guilt. You let it happen." He looked at the ground, hands in his pockets. "I'm sorry. After the wedding, I'll help however I can." I shook my head. "I don't want your money. Caleb, I want you to understand what they took from me, and how you benefited from it." The day before the wedding, my mother snapped at me for not smiling enough while packing welcome bags for guests. "Why can't you just be happy for your brother?" she asked. That was it, I snapped. "Maybe I'd be happier if you hadn't stolen my future to pay for table centerpieces and a champagne tower." Silence fell like a dropped glass. My father turned to me, red-faced. "We gave you everything, Natalie. A roof over your head, clothes, support for all your academic nonsense. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" I scoffed. "For broken promises and being treated like an afterthought? For draining the fund you promised was mine and pretending I never tried hard enough?" That night, I packed a bag and left. I moved in with my best friend Charlotte and her family, people who, without question, welcomed me like their own. Her parents had always seen me in a way my own never had. And as I closed the door to my childhood home behind me, I realized, it wasn't just about the money. It was about finally choosing myself. Leaving home should have broken me. But instead, it unlocked something fierce inside me. A quiet fire I hadn't realized I was capable of carrying. At Charlotte's house, I had my own room, a desk by the window, and something even more precious, peace. Her parents didn't ask intrusive questions. They simply let me be. And that space was exactly what I needed to focus on what came next. College acceptance season arrived in a blur of late-night emails and heart-thudding logins. I received offers from several excellent schools, Brown, Northwestern, even the University of Pennsylvania. But every acceptance came with the same gut-punch reality: partial aid. I'd won the academic battle, but without the financial backing my parents had promised. None of them were within reach. My fallback was clear: community college. And honestly, I was willing to take that route, if it meant staying on course. But I still held on to one last hope: the Hodson Trust Scholarship from Jefferson University. A full ride awarded to only a handful of students nationwide. When the email arrived, subject line: "Congratulations, finalist." I read it 6 times to be sure it was real. I'd been selected for the final interview round. The school would fly me to Baltimore for 2 days of evaluation, meetings, and panel interviews. I had just one problem: my parents couldn't know. Mrs. Bennett, who had been my unwavering anchor through this storm, helped cover for me. She coordinated with Dr. Rajan to create a false excuse: a weekend research seminar. While my parents thought I was running an experiment in town, I was actually boarding a train to Jefferson with nothing but my worn-out duffel bag and a heart full of cautious hope. The interviews were grueling, but I was ready. I spoke of science, of resilience, of my dream to build something that could outlast pain. And when Dr. Eleanor Hayes, the scholarship committee chair, asked me about what shaped my perspective on independence, I told her the truth. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I explained how promises were broken, how my path was erased, and how I chose to build a new one. "I'm not here for sympathy," I said. "I'm here because I believe I can contribute something that matters. And I've proven that I don't give up, no matter what gets taken from me." She nodded quietly. "Resilience isn't about never falling down, Ms. Parker. It's about how you rise." A week later, I got the call. I had won the Hodson. Full tuition, room, board, books, research stipend, a future that no one could take from me again. I didn't tell my parents right away. I wanted it to be final, irreversible, undeniable. So I waited for the scholarship paperwork to be signed, for the official letter to arrive, for every last detail to be secured. When the thick envelope from Jefferson University landed in my hands, I knew it was time. I chose a Sunday family dinner to make the announcement. Caleb and Olivia were there, fresh from their European honeymoon and glowing with newlywed pride. My parents were already on their 3rd round of wine by the time I cleared my throat. "I have news," I said, setting down my fork. 4 pairs of eyes turned toward me. "I've decided where I'm going to college." My mother immediately jumped in. "Natalie, we've been over this. Community college is the sensible. I'll be attending Jefferson University." I interrupted, my voice calm but resolute. "I've been awarded the Hodson Trust Scholarship. It covers everything: tuition, room and board, books, a research stipend. It's worth over $300. The silence that followed was everything I had imagined, and more. My father's fork clinked against his plate. My mother blinked, stunned. Caleb sat up straighter. Olivia froze mid-sip. Then, the scramble began. That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother finally said, recovering with a shaky smile. "We always knew you had it in you. We're so proud," my father added quickly. All that studying finally paid off. I looked at them, no anger in my voice, just clarity. "You didn't believe in me. You dismissed my goals. You spent the money you promised me. And now that I've done this on my own, you want to claim pride?" My father's expression soured. "That's unfair, Natalie. Sometimes families have to make tough decisions." "No," I said, quietly but firmly. "You made selfish ones. You never thought I'd succeed without you. And now that I have, you want credit." Caleb shifted uncomfortably. "Nat, I didn't know how far it had gone. I'm sorry. You knew enough," I said, looking directly at him. "And you stayed silent." I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I simply stood, tucked the acceptance letter back into my bag, and said, "I'll be leaving in August. I've arranged early housing. I won't be staying here this summer." "You don't want to spend the summer with us?" my mother asked, voice trembling. "After what you did," I replied softly, "I don't want to spend another minute pretending this family ever saw me as anything other than convenient." And with that, I walked out, not out of rage, but into freedom. Moving into my dorm at Jefferson that August felt like stepping into a different life, a life I had built, not one I was handed. I arrived alone, dragging 2 suitcases behind me. Everything I owned folded neatly into thrifted duffel bags. No send-off, no tearful hugs, no family car idling at the curb. Just me. My roommate, Lindsay, showed up with both parents and a younger sister in tow. They unpacked with cheerful energy, stringing fairy lights and arranging matching bedding while her mom asked about professors and her dad gave her a new tablet, just in case. I smiled politely from my side of the room, placing a single vintage anatomy poster on my wall. A thrift store find that had cost me $3 and meant everything. Lindsay asked gently, "Is your family coming later?" I hesitated. "No," I said, voice low, "we're not that close." To her credit, she didn't press. Instead, she offered to help me hang the poster. And that small gesture became the first thread in the new life I was weaving. A life where people cared not because they were obligated, but because they chose to. Academically, I thrived. The labs were everything I had dreamed of. The professors were brilliant, the curriculum demanding, and for the first time in years, I felt intellectually alive. I poured myself into biomedical research, spending late nights in the lab analyzing synthetic scaffolds and polymer interactions, building skills and confidence with every experiment. But emotionally, the transition hit hard. While other students went home on weekends, received care packages, or called their parents after hard exams, I carried my victories in silence. No one texted me good luck. No one asked how I was sleeping. There were nights I stayed up until 3 a.m. crying in the dorm showers, not because of the workload, but because even success felt lonely when you had no one to share it with. Eventually, I walked myself to the campus counseling center and signed up for therapy. Dr. Rivera, my assigned therapist, didn't tell me to be grateful. She didn't minimize what had happened. She listened, and for the first time, I began to unpack everything I had buried under ambition and perfectionism. "You've been surviving," she said during one session. "But now it's time to start healing." Slowly, I built a circle around me. Lindsay became a true friend. I joined a study group, bonded with Zach and Priya, two students who also came from complicated homes. Together, we lifted each other through midterms, heartbreaks, and moments of quiet self-doubt. I was still alone in many ways, but no longer lonely. I was no longer trying to prove myself to those who had failed me. I was building something entirely my own. When Thanksgiving break arrived, Jefferson's campus emptied almost overnight. Students rushed to airports, bus stations, and train platforms, all eager to return to the comfort of home. I stayed behind. My mother had texted a few times in the days leading up to the holiday. The tone was uneven, first warm, then passive-aggressive. "Caleb and Olivia will be home for Thanksgiving," she wrote. "We'd love to see you too, Natalie." But I wasn't ready, not after everything they had done, and failed to acknowledge. I responded simply, "I'm staying on campus to assist in the lab over break." It was true, though not the whole reason. That Thursday, while most of my classmates carved turkeys with their families, I sat in the International Students' Lounge, eating a homemade meal with a group of strangers who quickly became something more. They shared stories of home countries thousands of miles away, of chosen family, of resilience. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the only one forging a path without a safety net. Christmas was harder. The dorms went nearly silent. My roommate had gone home. My study partners were scattered across the country, and even the lab was closed for the holiday. I spent Christmas morning curled up in a hoodie, sipping instant cocoa and watching snow fall outside the window of the common room. Around noon, I received an email from Caleb. Subject line: "I miss you." His message was brief, but different, not defensive, not trying to explain anything away. Just honest. "Natalie, I know I failed you. I should have spoken up. I took the easy way out and pretended I didn't know what was happening. But I did, and I'm sorry. I miss having you in my life. Caleb." I didn't reply right away. I sat with the message, letting the weight of it settle. For so long, I had painted him as just another part of the betrayal. But in that moment, I saw a sliver of something more: regret, maybe even growth. That night, I journaled until my hand cramped. I wasn't ready to forgive. Not fully, but I also didn't want to carry bitterness like a second skin forever. Caleb's message wasn't redemption, but it was a start. And in the quiet of that snow-covered campus, I began to consider something I hadn't dared to before. That healing might mean letting go, not just of pain, but of the version of the past I'd clung to so tightly. Spring semester brought more than coursework, it brought clarity. My research in Professor Chen's biomedical engineering lab was progressing faster than I expected. We were studying biocompatible polymers for tissue regeneration, and the early results were promising enough that she hinted at the possibility of publishing a paper, with my name on it. It was a moment I would have once wanted to rush home and share. But now, I celebrated quietly, with Lindsay, who brought cupcakes from the dining hall, and Priya and Zach, who showed up to the lab after hours just to cheer me on. But it was a call with Mrs. Bennett, my former high school counselor, that brought tears to my eyes. I always knew you'd thrive once you were in the right place, she said, her voice warm. And now look at you. Natalie, you're not just surviving, you're leading. I thought about that word, leading, as I looked around campus and saw students struggling the way I once had. Scholarship students, first-generation college kids, those without supportive families or anyone to call when midterms hit hard or the loneliness crept in. That's when the idea came to me, a support program for students like me. Not just tutoring or academic advising, but real help, mentorship, emotional support, holiday housing, even professional clothes for interviews. I pitched it to the Student Development Office, and to my surprise, they not only approved it, they funded it. By the end of my sophomore year, the First Generation Support Initiative had its own small office, a student leadership team, and a calendar of workshops, meals, and peer support circles. What started as a way to ease my own pain had grown into something that helped others carry their burdens too. You built the support you wished you had, Dr. Rivera said during one of our final therapy sessions before she left the university. She was right. My family still didn't know about the program, or much of anything. Really, Caleb and I were slowly rebuilding our relationship, this time on even footing. We FaceTimed every few weeks, catching up about school and work. He never pressed about the past, and I didn't rehash it. It was fragile, but it was real. My parents, though, remained distant. When they tried to reach out, it was often layered with guilt or revisionist stories, painting themselves as the proud parents who always believed in me. But I no longer needed their approval. I wasn't chasing validation. I had created a life that reflected who I was, not who they wanted me to be. And for the first time, that was more than enough. 4 years ago, I stood in my childhood kitchen, holding bank statements that shattered everything I believed about my family. Today, I stand at the threshold of something bigger than I ever dreamed. I've been accepted into a fully funded PhD program at MIT. With 2 published research papers under my belt and a support initiative that's helped dozens of students just like me. But the greatest achievement? Learning that I didn't need the approval of people who failed to protect me in order to thrive. My past didn't define me, my choices did. I've rebuilt my life piece by piece. Not out of revenge, but out of resilience. I didn't just prove them wrong, I proved myself right. Folded hands if Natalie's story touched your heart. Please leave a comment below. Pushpin, have you ever had to rise again after a betrayal? Speech balloon, share your story. It might give hope to someone else walking a lonely path right now. Right finger, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new emotional, inspiring story each week, because the next story might be yours.